Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Welcome to our 2 o'clock update on the status of the Westchester coronavirus outbreak. We're here in Village Hall for the Village of Rye Brook, and I'm joined by Mayor Paul Rosenberg. We're here to deliver some donated masks that came from Hanes Brands Incorporated, which the village is going to use to distribute to a variety of necessary medical facilities, to child care providers, through the school district, senior groups, other Rye Brook businesses. And I'm very happy to be here. I'm sitting in the mayor's chair, and I apologize.
That's quite all right.
But I'm very happy to have my friend, Mayor Paul Rosenberg, with us. Paul, thanks for being here, and tell us a little bit about the Village of Rye Brook.
Thank you, George. Well, we have about 10,000 people in the Village of Rye Brook, and we have had roughly a cumulative about 175-ish cumulative cases, and I think that the active cases now are down below 10. So we're very, very happy about that. And we would just want to thank you for your leadership and all the resources that you provided and your administration throughout the last 11 weeks. It's just been horrible, but you made it a little bit more bearable. So thank you.
Well, we're joined here in the Village Hall by Village Administrator Chris Bradbury, who's in the audience, and we have members of the Village Board who are with us as well. It's actually a legal meeting, so I probably should mention names. But I had the good fortune to serve as state assemblyman and then state senator representing the Village of Rye Brook. And we've worked together on a lot of projects during those years, things that involve hotel tax revenue that for a number of years was very helpful to the village. The reorganization of what is the Portchester Rye Brook Library,
yep.
And the reconfiguration of the governance of that to be helpful in Rye Brook. Also restructuring issues that relate to term of offices and sequence of elections,
yep.
which has saved Rye Brook money by not having an election every single year here in the village. In most of those cases, it's really things that the village identified as needing, and then you try to be a good legislative partner in those assignments. And now in this assignment in White Plains to be helpful as well. We had hoped that our sales tax efforts would have been helpful to you, but
well,
that didn't work out the way planned.
All good deeds, right, George?
At some point in time, hopefully we'll see that back again.
Absolutely.
But here in Rye Brook, for those who may not know their long-term history, this was once the unincorporated section of the town of Rye. And the town of Rye at one point was all the land between the Mamaroneck River and what we know of as the Byram River. And it involved the village of Portchester, in the village of Rye, which is now the city of Rye, the section of Mamaroneck village, which is the nickname of it is Rye Neck, and then this unincorporated piece, which in 1982 was incorporated as the Village of Rye Brook. And it has great dynamism in this community. It has certain wonderful geographic advantages, proximate to the Hutch, proximate to 287. So wonderful housing options here. So many people come and live. It's served by 2 school districts. The Blind Brook district covers the bulk of the residences here. Right.
Yep.
And it is one of the top performing school districts in the state. So you really have much to be proud of in the village, Paul.
Thank you. And listen, Rye Brook is a great place to live. We're mainly a bedroom community. Up until very recently, we had 2 very large hotels, but unfortunately, those 2 hotels have closed for now. The Rye-Town Hilton as well as the Doral Arrowwood. As the county executive mentioned, we have great proximity to not only the highways, but to the train stations of both Portchester and the city of Rye. So it's a great place to live. We have a very active community base. All of our village boards and commissions and committees are volunteer. So, and we have no lack of people looking to volunteer. So we're very happy to and lucky to be able to live here.
I've been in this building numerous times for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, the Technology Telecommunications group that gets together. Very active youth sports program here in the village, and a seniors program based out of the Basilico Center on Garibaldi Place in the southern end of the community, with lots of seniors that are well served. Liz Rothfeld that manages it and so forth. So we're very proud that Rye Brook is part of this great mosaic of Westchester County, and thank you for letting us camp out here for this update.
We're more than happy to have you anytime.
Thank you. I'll give you the official elbow badge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you again, the Village of Rye Brook. We're going to cover some of our statistics so that we identify where we are as of today with the coronavirus outbreak. We have seen that we have a total of 33,293 individuals that have tested positive for coronavirus. The total testing of Westchester residents is now at 148,651 people. By tomorrow, we expect to reach 150,000 tests, which means 15% of our population would have been tested for coronavirus. That is, again, I say this every day, I know it's repetitious, but this is far and away more than any other jurisdiction has as a percentage of their population. And the public health professionals tell us that until there's a vaccine, until there's an antiviral treatment, the most important strategy is to test, to identify who has the virus, and then to try to isolate those from bringing their contagion to other people. And the more we test, the better off we are in being able to do this. So that is a good sign. A number of active cases, which Paul alluded to in terms of the village, countywide is now at 1,501 active cases. That is a continuation of a 7-week diminution night after night after night, where we have more people that have gone through the 14-week incubation period and have come out healthy than we have people that are coming in new infections. That is a good sign. And now that we're in phase 1 of the opening, as Governor Cuomo has identified it, we are looking very carefully to see if we have a spike in infections, anything that might tell us that we have to stop opening the things that we're doing. As it stands now, under the governor's direction, we have opened construction sites, we have opened manufacturing facilities, we have involved now curbside retail. We'll swing by the Rye Ridge Plaza to see how curbside retail is working once I leave here. And the Rye Ridge Plaza is very much the central commercial area for the village of Rye Brook, but it attracts people from Portchester, from the city of Rye, from Harrison, and from other locations around because it has some major stores in that complex. But that curbside retail is probably the most outward sign of opening that we'll see. And then we're hopeful, according to the way the governor has laid it out, that if we can go through to June 9th, which will be the 2-week interval from when we opened up on Tuesday here, then on June 9th, we would move to phase 2. Phase 2 would open all retail. So that means the full shopping center would be open. It won't operate the same way. You won't be able to walk in and, sort of cluster around inside the store. There'll be social distancing, little marks on the floor as to where you have to stand, but you can look at product. I'm told by those who shop much more effectively than I do. It's not about what you buy, it's how you look and assess the different things before you buy. And that is part of the joy of shopping, I guess, since I don't do much of it. But the upshot of it is all the retail offices will open. And then what will also open, that's very important, is administrative offices. And not just the village of Rye Brook and the county of Westchester. We have many corporate headquarters here in Westchester County. We're not far from IBM and PepsiCo, MasterCard. They're all within a baseball's throw from where we sit. And when those offices open up and those executives and those various white-collar workers come back in, joined with the blue-collar workforce in the construction trades that are back on the job, the plumbers and the electricians and so forth, we start to have people back out in the society ready to interact, going into stores and buying things and so forth. 2 weeks after that, if we stay on schedule, on or about June 23rd, we'd be ready to go into phase 3, and that is when we open up restaurants. And my friends know that I love to go out to eat, and there's many great places to eat here in Rye Brook and in the neighboring communities as well. So, but all of those things are possible only if we manage the cases and manage it well. That's why contact tracing is very important. That's also why we have to make sure that when we go out, we wear masks and we socially distance. And I say this every day, but it bears repeating because you hear other different messages. This is not part of our natural culture. We don't normally wear masks. Anytime I've ever been sick, I never thought to wear a mask. But now we do this, not to make a political statement, but to protect other people from whatever we might have that might infect them. That's the purpose of it. If we protect each other from that infection, we can open up the stores. We can open up the restaurants, which is what we want to do. We can have the economy open and become functional in the way that we want it to be functional if we know that we're protecting our fellow commuters on the train or our fellow diners in a restaurant from having the spread of the disease. So that's important. Social distancing, in the line of work that I do, I'm accustomed to shaking hands and hugging friends that I haven't seen. So you have to, extend the elbow as a sign of respect instead. And we just get through this. And I know that that is a challenge for all of us. We have had through last night 1,357 deaths in Westchester County. Overnight, we lost 5 of our Westchester fellow residents, a tragedy, also a much lower number than we experienced back at our peak 7 weeks ago. So 1,500 active cases as of today, almost 15% of the county population tested, and the number of deaths, while rising to 1,357, a smaller number overnight. I'll touch on a few other things. I don't intend to make this a long, elaborate report as we start to deal with certain issues. We worked earlier today with a visit to Feeding Westchester, which is the source for food distribution around the county. Many more people than normal have food insecurity, meaning that through unemployment, through loss, perhaps closed doors of a business, people in the gig economy are unsure about how they're going to feed their family. And Feeding Westchester, which normally helps those that are in poverty situations, and they do that direct food distribution and also through local food pantries. There are a number right next door to us here in Portchester. Now that their efforts have to expand. I was over there to watch what their Thursday afternoon distribution looks like. It's very significant. And Westchester County is part of our $3 million food distribution program plan. We're going to be adding $750,000 to Feeding Westchester for their efforts. And then we're going to take a similar amount and we're going to use that to support the local food pantries where they exist, both in this area and all across the county. We think that that's an important statement to make in terms of food insecurity. And that is really part of what we have to deal with. The governor has established a Nourish New York initiative, and that is a much more broader based situation that involves all across the state. Feeding Westchester fits into that. And before the pandemic, we probably had about 200,000 people in a county of 1 million people that needed the assistance of Feeding Westchester. Now that number has jumped up to 500,000. That's almost half of our population in some way, shape, or form. Our seniors, as well as those who are without work, are in that situation. So hopefully that will be an important step forward in our efforts. We've mentioned that we've worked to do our share in the region of getting contact tracing. And we have been working contact tracing since the beginning of Tuesday when we opened. We have members of our Department of Health, County Department of Health, who are trained to do this. They actually started doing contact tracing in the beginning of the pandemic, and then the numbers just became too large just for their operation to do it. But we've restarted it. We've had support from all of our local governments, from the various separate offices of county government, the county clerk, the board of legislators, district attorney's office, and all of that represent people who are helping us track the spread of the contagion. And all of that is necessary to get to phase 2. And when we get to phase 2, hopefully we will be in good order. I do want to make a note about the census. Right now, we're having our decennial count of all the people that live in the United States of America. And that census is underway. Under normal circumstances, the census count would end by the end of July. But because of the pandemic, that period of time is extended to October 31st. We will not be the royal we, it'll be the U.S. Census Bureau. We will not be out in the field knocking on doors until mid-August. That's the latest perception as to when we think the contagion will be such that we can do that work. But we've had a very robust online presence with the ability for people to go online, my2020census.gov, and fill out the census form. That's exactly how I did it. It took less than 10 minutes. It was no time at all. It does not ask you for personal information that would compromise your security. Obviously, it's most interested in your address and the other people that live with you. Some demographic questions are helpful. Your age certainly is important to know. Some of those other demographic questions that would be helpful. And then when you submit it, you would be, one part of that overall counting of the United States. Here in Rye Brook Village, they've had a very good result so far. They're in the top 10 of communities. They're very close to surpassing their percentage of households from 2010. And we're setting a goal of 80% response for Rye Brook. And if you hit it, Paul, once the restaurants are open, I'll take your village board out to dinner. How's that?
Thank you.
At a place in Rye Brook. So we're
Absolutely.
keeping the money local. Fortunately, they have a 5-member board, not a 7-member board like some other communities do. That offer is not extended to every community quite yet. We'll see how far we go. But in all seriousness, Rye Brook and a number of other communities are doing very well. And we need to have work in some other communities. We have 2 communities that are under 50% response ratio right now. We want to work to get those up. We have 2 communities that have already beaten what they did in 2010, Lewisboro, Croton on Hudson. We've got 8 of those communities, which including Rye Brook is above 70%. And we hope to hit 80% with all of this extra energy. And if we can do that and get an accurate count, we think we are a county of over 1 million population. We've never hit that number officially in our census review, but we believe that that is the correct number of people in the county. If we do hit that number, then that will help us with grant money. It will help us with representation, since a number of different legislative bodies are apportioned out by population. And if you accurately project a population that's higher, you will get that much more percentage-wise from a member of the House of Representatives, state senator, state assembly, county legislator. Since I've held 3 of those 4 positions, I know that it's important to know what your turf is and who you represent, because you're responsible to them. Just as I said up front, the things that I tried to do in the state legislature for Rye Brook is a function of the connectedness between the population base of a legislator's district and how they function. So the census is ongoing right now. If you're still home and you haven't filed the census, my2020census.gov. You can do it, I say before the end of this broadcast, but the end of the broadcast is coming pretty quickly. So, but do it today if you haven't done it, and we think that would be very helpful to do. I have with me Emily Lavin and Joe Scamato from my communications team. Catherine Chaffee is out there remote with the host function. I don't know, Catherine, do we have any questions from the press?
We do. We have 2 questions from Chris Eberhardt from the Journal News. He asks, the first one is, can you talk a little bit about what phase 2 is and where Westchester is in terms of hitting benchmarks to begin phase 2?
Well, the benchmarks that we have to hit remain the same 7 categories that we had to hit to open the door into phase 1. Some of them we know are not even in question. The amount of testing that we've done for our county as part of a region, we have to contribute at least 30,000 tests a month. We're hitting 50,000 tests a month, so that the total testing is not an issue. The availability of total hospital beds and ICU beds, there are 2 separate criteria to hit. Westchester is clearly past that mark, as have the other counties, so those are not even in contention. The contact tracing structure requires us to properly train and engage a significant number of contact tracers, and they're supposed to be dealing with everybody who tested as positive after the Tuesday date that we opened up the county. And the numbers over those number of days have been pretty small, and so we have more than enough contact tracers in place to be able to do the research. Although any one communication could take a certain amount of time. If you talk to me, then I'm going to have to tell you everybody interacted with. When I went to get gas last night, did I talk to the counterman at the local gas station? Did I talk to the person that I bought coffee from this morning? Are they in that world? And if they are, then they have to be touched base to see what their health is. So the contact tracing function has to be met. And then we have to see a diminution in the number of people hospitalized, a diminution in the number of deaths overnight, and no increase in new hospitalizations. So we might have a net decrease in hospitalization. 35 people have recovered and go home, but 25 people come in. 25 people coming in is too high a number of new infections, even if it's offset by the number of people that are leaving. So you could have a decrease in net hospitalizations, but you could still be experiencing an increase in new hospitalizations, which may represent the spread of the disease. So all of those metrics have to be met to go from where we are now to phase 2. We're a couple of days into phase 1. And as I report the numbers still show us a continual decline. So we have not hit anything yet that causes us concern. But there's still, 13 days to go, 11 days to go. That's a long time for us to continue to hit those metrics. Those will be what triggers entrance into phase 2. In phase 2, we open the door to all retail. As I said a bit earlier, all the mom and pop stores, all of the major malls, strip malls, indoor malls, all of those retail facilities open under phase 2. And in Westchester County, that is a big thing. We have a couple of major malls in White Plains. We have Jefferson Valley Mall up county. We have Central Avenue corridor in Yonkers. That's a major commercial corridor. And we have shopping in a number of other places all throughout our county. All of those would open in phase 2. All of our professional services offices would open. That's our real estate offices. And in this area, there's quite a few of those. It would mean the accounting firms, the law firms, plenty of those in this county, the major corporate headquarters, as I alluded to, but also the regional headquarters of companies that have chosen to put their regional headquarters in Westchester County and operate a 30, 40 person operation here to serve the New York metropolitan. All of that stuff opens again. And that's very important. As I said, I think earlier, I'm repeating myself, but phase 2 brings a lot of the white collar jobs back into business. Some of those people are working out of home. The blue collar jobs, unfortunately, do not lend themselves to working at home. You work at a site and you put, the elbow grease into it. the kind of work my mom and dad did during their lives. But phase 2 will help us open up the society in a way that'll be more visible. You would see Rye Ridge Shopping Center start to have more business. What you won't see until phase 3 is the opening of restaurants. So while you go to the shopping center, you would not see Chipotle open. You would not see the Rye Ridge Deli open. It's open for takeouts. You can go there and get takeout food. So it still functions at that level, but it isn't the walk-in, sit down, be served restaurant. That comes in phase 3. So those are the basic parameters of what phase 2 gives us. In theory, June 9th triggers phase 2. We have to keep making the mark on these 7 indicators.
Okay, his next question and the last question we have is about summer camp. He says it might be too early to tell, but will there be summer camp this summer?
Well, the state eliminated the opening of camps in general, summer and day and otherwise, as a direct executive order from the governor. He has not indicated yet that he's ready to lift that order. I truthfully thought that there probably was going to be a lifting of the camp order until about 3 weeks ago. We had this a rising of a disease, Kawasaki-like symptoms, inflammation that affected young children up to pre-puberty. And prior to that, I think we were all working on the basis that the COVID disease was not affecting young children, that they were pretty much not immune to it, but not affected by it greatly. Now with that proviso, I think there's a greater concern and a greater reluctance to move forward in this direction. We're in the last few days of May. Normally, if it's a camp program that's a sleepaway camp, you would have made those decisions by now, probably by the mid-month at the latest. And so there's now a delay that may make it impossible to run them. On the day camp side, I'm sure this is true of the village, as it is true of the county in parts. Day camp programs are available, and you can start them a little bit later, but usually those camp programs start up right after the 4th of July. Sometimes they start up the week before, but usually they're definitely on by after the 4th of July, depending on where Independence Day falls. And they run to the middle week of August, usually around the 12th, 15th of the month. Those camp programs stop. If we can't get a clearance to open them sometime soon, then you can't gear them up to open on the front end, and it's very hard for them to be of value if they're only going to be open for a couple of weeks. There may be some individual day programs for kids that the villages and the towns will do. Some of them they were planning to do anyway, and some of them they may come up with creatively. We're looking at the potential that we don't open Playland Amusement Park. Haven't made that decision finally yet. But if we don't open Playland Amusement Park, we're looking at using the parking lot for some drive-in movies as an alternative recreation. It's not equivalent to having the amusement park open, but it's something that you can do given the fact we have this asset. So I'm sure the village and the other towns and cities will be creative in trying to use their asset as best as they can. So with that, I'm going to thank members of the press for interacting with us. If they have any questions, they can call Catherine Chaffee. I'm happy to talk with them offline. I know that Mayor Rosenberg is happy to tell you about Rye Brook, so feel free to call him. 939-1121 is the village switchboard. I don't know if anybody's adding it, but if you hit #3, you'll get either the mayor or the village manager, as I recall. Am I giving out the right number? Hopefully.
Yes.
Nobody's corrected me yet, so it must be the right number. You can leave a message, and I'm sure they'll get back to you. So I'm George Latimer. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow we'll have our Facebook Live again at 11. We'll be in the city of New Rochelle tomorrow to report. Our friend Mayor Noam Bramson will be with us for that. They were the original ground zero here in Westchester County. They've done extremely well since then. And so we'll be happy to visit with Noam in New Rochelle City Hall tomorrow. Again, thanks to the village of Rye Brook, to Mayor Rosenberg, to trustees, and to Chris Bradbury and all. Have a wonderful day and stay safe.